I grew up in a small town called Marrow Creek, tucked between the misty woods of northern Oregon. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where doors are left unlocked, and people still wave from their porches. But every October, something strange happens here, something no one ever talks about openly. They call it the offering. I didn't think much of it when I was a kid. Halloween was just different here. We didn't go trick-or-treating like normal kids. There were no decorated lawns, no costume parades, no pumpkin contests. In fact, from October 30th to November 1st, the entire town seemed to shut down. Curtains stayed closed. Lights went out early. And at exactly 9 p.m. every Halloween night, a church bell would toll 13 times, slow, heavy, echoing across the valley. Every year, my parents would herd me inside before sunset, lock the doors, and tape black garbage bags over the windows. "Don't look outside," my dad would warn. "And whatever you hear, don't answer the door." I used to think it was just a weird local superstition, until the year I decided to find out the truth. It started with a new neighbor. Her name was Cynthia Morales, a single mom from Portland who moved into the old Pinehurst house down the street. Everyone in town avoided that place. It had been empty for years, ever since the Dawson family moved away after Halloween of '98. But people whispered that the Dawsons didn't move, they vanished. Cynthia was kind, loud, and too curious for her own good. She had a daughter, Lily, about 10 years old. They didn't know about the offering, and nobody warned them. It was a week before Halloween when I noticed her putting up decorations, pumpkins, fake cobwebs, orange lights. The kind of cheerful stuff you'd see anywhere else in America. But here, it was like she was painting a target on her door. I remember old Mrs. Brenner from across the street shuffling up to her, wringing her hands. "Take those down, dear," she said in a trembling voice. Cynthia just laughed. "Oh, come on. It's Halloween. What's the harm?" Mrs. Brenner's eyes filled with something like panic. "You don't want to invite them." Cynthia just brushed it off. She didn't know what that meant. The night before Halloween, my dad brought out the plywood boards for the windows and double-checked the locks. I asked him again, like I did every year, what exactly we were hiding from. He gave me that same haunted look. "Some things are better left unspoken, son." But this time I was done with silence. I was 17, old enough to know the truth. So I decided to stay awake that Halloween night. I told my parents I'd go to bed early, but instead, I waited in my room with the lights off and a blanket over the window. The first sign that something was wrong came around 8:45. The air outside grew still, too still. Even the crickets stopped chirping. Then came a faint sound, like wind whistling through the trees. Only it wasn't wind. It was humming, a low, rhythmic humming that seemed to rise from the forest itself. Then, right at 9 p.m., the bell rang. 13 times. Slow, echoing. And with each toll, the humming grew louder. I crept to my window and lifted the edge of the blanket. The street was pitch black. No lights, no cars, just mist rolling through like smoke. Then I saw movement. At first, I thought it was just shadows. But then I realized people were walking down the street. Dozens of them. Except they weren't, right? Their movements were stiff, like marionettes. Their heads hung low, and they all wore masks, handmade, crude things. Some looked like skulls, others like burlap sacks stitched with buttons for eyes. Each one carried something. A bundle, a doll, a box wrapped in cloth. Offerings. They were heading toward the woods at the edge of town. Then I saw Cynthia. She must have heard the bell, too. I saw her open her door, curious, her little girl clutching her hand. She stepped out onto her porch, confusion on her face as the masked figures passed her yard. One of them stopped, turned its head toward her. Even from my window, I felt my stomach drop. That mask, it was wrong. The eyes weren't buttons or paint. They were human eyes, wide and bloodshot, staring through slits in the mask. Cynthia waved nervously. "Hey, is this some kind of local parade?" The masked figure didn't respond. It just tilted its head slowly, like an animal trying to understand her voice. Then, in a voice that sounded dry and cracking, it said, "Would you offer something tonight?" Cynthia blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" The figure took a step forward, then another. That's when my dad burst into my room and yanked me away from the window. "What did I tell you?" he hissed, slamming the curtains shut. You never look outside. I wanted to ask what was happening, but before I could, there was a scream. Cynthia's scream. Then Lily's. And then silence. No one saw Cynthia or Lily again after that night. The police said they left town suddenly, but everyone knew it wasn't true. The Pinehurst house stood empty again, windows dark, decorations still hanging limp in the wind. I couldn't sleep for days. The images replayed in my head. Those masks, the way they moved, the sound of that bell. So I did what I shouldn't have. I started asking questions. At first, people ignored me. Then they got angry. Old Mrs. Brenner told me I should stop digging up graves that were better left covered. Pastor Wilkes from a local church said the tradition was a covenant older than the town itself. But one night, my friend Evan told me to meet him behind the library. He said his grandfather had been part of it once. We met under the flickering streetlight, our breath misting in the cold air. Evan looked terrified. They'll kill me if they know I told you, he whispered. He told me that Marrow Creek wasn't founded like other towns. Back in the 1800s, when settlers came here, something in the woods drove them mad. People went missing. Livestock were found mutilated. Children vanished. Then one Halloween, a group of townsfolk made a pact. They brought offerings, objects of value, sometimes even animals, and left them at the forest's edge. The disappearances stopped. For a while. Then it wanted more. So every year, the town gave it something greater. A piece of themselves. A person. I laughed, but it came out shaky. That's insane. You're saying we, what? Sacrifice people. Evan nodded slowly. Not everyone. It chooses. And if it's not given what it wants. He trailed off, eyes darting toward the dark tree line. They say 1 year, the town didn't make an offering. Half the population was gone by morning. I wanted to call him crazy, but deep down, something in me already believed it. The next Halloween, I decided to prove it. I brought a flashlight, a camera, and waited near the woods, hidden behind an old stone wall. I told myself I was just going to watch, just to see. At 9 p.m., the bell began to toll. 13 times. The procession started again, masked figures drifting silently toward the forest, each carrying their offerings. But this time, I noticed something I hadn't before. There were others watching, too. Unmasked, terrified. The sheriff, the pastor, my own father. They stood near the church, their heads bowed, like they were praying. Then I saw something moving between the trees. Tall, thin, pale. At first I thought it was smoke, but no, it was alive. Its limbs were too long, its face featureless except for a dark slit where a mouth should be. It towered over the procession, moving like liquid shadow. And then it opened its mouth and screamed. The sound was like metal scraping against bone. The masked townsfolk dropped to their knees, placing their offerings at the forest edge. The thing reached out with a hand that wasn't really a hand and took them. Objects, animals, and one person, a girl, struggling, crying. I recognized her. It was Hannah, the sheriff's daughter. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't move. I just watched as the thing wrapped its shadowy fingers around her and pulled her into the dark. And then it was gone. The crowd rose, silent, and began to walk back to town as if nothing had happened. I ran home, shaking, heart hammering. When I burst through the door, my dad was sitting in the dark. He didn't look surprised. He just sighed. You shouldn't have seen that, Dad. I choked out. They killed her. That thing. He stood up, eyes full of something like sorrow and guilt. It's the only way the town survives. I took a step back. You knew. He didn't answer. I left Marrow Creek the next day, packed whatever I could fit in my car, and drove until the radio static cleared and the woods disappeared in the rearview mirror. For years, I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, that maybe I'd imagined it. But every October 31st, I wake up at 9 p.m. on the dot, no matter where I am, and I swear I hear that bell. 13 times. And last night, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just a folded piece of parchment. Inside was a photograph of me, standing in the woods. From last year. Underneath, scrawled in something that looked like dried mud, or blood, or 4 words. Your turn this year. I burned the letter. I threw the ashes in the sink and ran the water until the smell disappeared. But tonight, is Halloween again. It's 8:59 p.m., and somewhere outside my window, I swear I hear the bell start to ring. 1, 2, 3. I think it's too late to run. You probably won't believe me, but that's fine. I wouldn't believe it either if I hadn't lived through it. All I can say is this. If you ever hear knocking at your door at 3:17 a.m., don't answer it, no matter how polite the voice sounds, because it isn't human. I moved into my apartment on the east side of Portland about a year ago. It wasn't much, just a small one-bedroom above an old bakery that always smelled faintly of sugar and yeast. I'd just broken up with my girlfriend and needed space. Somewhere quiet, somewhere cheap. The place was perfect. Cheap rent, a decent landlord, and neighbors who mostly kept to themselves. Except for one thing. The guy who lived across the hall. Apartment 3B. No one ever saw him move in or out. The blinds were always shut, the lights always off. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I'd hear sounds, footsteps pacing, whispering, something like fingernails tapping on the wall that separated our apartments. It creeped me out, but I figured everyone in an old building makes noise. Until the knocking started. The first time was about 3 weeks after I moved in. I'd been up late scrolling my phone, half asleep, when I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. 3 sharp raps on my door. I checked my phone. 3:17 a.m. exactly. At first, I thought maybe it was a drunk neighbor or some kind of prank. I got up, walked to the door, and peered through the peephole. No one. The hallway was empty. I opened the door a crack, just enough to look both ways. Nothing. No sound. The air felt thick like static before a storm. I shrugged it off and went back to bed. But the next night, it happened again. Knock, knock, knock. 3:17 a.m. on the dot. This time, I didn't open the door. I just stood there in the dark, my heart pounding, listening. After a few seconds, a voice whispered through the door. A man's voice. Calm, polite. May I come in? I froze. I didn't answer. The voice came again, softer this time. Please. It's cold. That was enough for me. I backed away and sat on my bed, staring at the door until sunrise. When I checked through the peephole in the morning, there was a single wet footprint outside my door. Barefoot. Human. But too long. I told the landlord, Mrs. Patel, about it later that day. She gave me this strange look, like she'd been expecting me to say that. What time? She asked. 3:17, I said. She went pale. Then she sighed and rubbed her temples. You mustn't answer him, she said softly. Ever. He'll stop eventually. What are you talking about? Who is it? She hesitated. He knocks every few years. Always finds someone new. And that's all she'd say. That night, I put a chair against the door. I left the hallway light on, just in case. 3:17 came. And sure enough, knock, knock, knock. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then the voice. Please let me in. Silence. Then another knock, this time softer like fingertips brushing wood. I'm sorry I woke you, the voice said. I just need to see you. I won't stay long. I backed further into the room. The voice started humming. A slow, tuneless hum. It went on for maybe 30 seconds, then stopped. And then I heard something I'll never forget. The sound of my own voice on the other side of the door, whispering, Please, let me in. I barely slept after that. The next morning, I went straight to the police. The officer at the front desk listened politely, but didn't seem interested. Could be a trespasser, he said. We'll send someone to take a look. No one ever came. That night, I tried something different. I set up my phone camera, facing the door. I hit record at 3:10 and sat on my bed, staring. When the knocking came, I didn't move. The voice came again, calm, polite, almost soothing. Let me in. I kept the camera rolling. When it stopped, I waited a few more minutes, then grabbed my phone and played the video. The timestamp read 3:17 a.m. The knocking was there, clear as day. But there was no one at the door. The peephole, the hallway light, empty, yet the knocks were loud, like someone pounding inches from the mic. And worse, the voice wasn't on the recording at all. Just static. By the 4th night, I was terrified to sleep. I drank coffee until sunrise, staring at the door, counting the minutes until 3:17. The knocking didn't come. For 3 nights in a row, it didn't come. I started to relax. Maybe it was over. Maybe Mrs. Patel was right. Then on the 5th night, it came back. But not at my door. At my window. Knock. Knock, knock. 3 sharp raps on the glass beside my bed. I shot upright. My apartment was on the 3rd floor. No fire escape. No ledge. Nothing. The knocking came again, softer this time. Then a voice. Please, let me in. I grabbed my phone, fumbling with the flashlight, and pointed it toward the window. For half a second, I saw it. A face. Pressed against the glass. Pale, eyes too wide, lips black with cold. But it wasn't just a face. It was my face. Smiling. Then it was gone. I packed my things that night. I didn't care about the lease or the deposit. I called a friend in Vancouver and begged to crash on his couch. He picked me up the next morning, just after sunrise. As we left, I looked up at my window one last time. Someone was standing there, watching. I didn't tell my friend. I didn't sleep for days. But a week later, I got curious, stupidly curious. I went back. Mrs. Patel wasn't at the front desk anymore. A new guy was there, maybe in his 30s. I asked him what happened to her. He frowned. You mean Mrs. Patel? She passed away. Heart attack. About a week ago. I thanked him and turned to leave. But then he said something that froze me in my tracks. You were the tenant from 3A, right? Yeah, I said slowly. He nodded. Funny. You're the second person to ask about that unit this week. Some guy came by a few nights ago. Said he was looking for his brother. Said his brother lived in 3A before he, Before he what? The man hesitated. Before he disappeared. I didn't wait to hear the rest. It's been 6 months since I left that apartment, but I still wake up every night at 3:17 on the dot. I moved states, changed jobs, got a new number. But 2 nights ago, something happened. I was staying at a hotel for work, 7th floor. Around 3 in the morning, I felt that same static in the air, that pressure that makes your ears ring. Then, knock, 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 from the hotel door. My phone screen said 3:17 a.m. I didn't move, didn't breathe. And then, through the door, I heard my own voice again. Please, let me in. I grabbed my things and left before sunrise. Drove until I couldn't keep my eyes open. Slept in my car at a gas station. When I woke up, there was a note tucked under my wiper blade. No envelope, just a folded scrap of paper. 3 words written in perfect block letters. You let me in that I don't know what that means. I've been careful, deadbolts, no windows open, no mirrors uncovered at night. But something's changing. Every time I look in a mirror now, I notice small differences. The reflection lags a split second behind me. The eyes don't blink at the same time. And last night, when I turned off the light, I swear I saw movement, my reflection smiling long after I stopped. And I think I understand now. The knocking wasn't someone asking to come in. It was me asking to come out. I don't know how long I've been writing this. The clock on my laptop says 3:15 a.m. I've got 2 minutes before it starts again. The knocking, the voice, my voice. I can already hear the static building in the walls. The air's heavy. My reflection's moving even though I'm not. If you're reading this, promise me something. If you ever hear knocking at 3:17 a.m., don't answer, don't look, don't listen, because once you do, you'll never know which side of the door you're really on. I used to think I grew up in a normal home. It was a little old, sure, the kind of creaky, drafty 2-story farmhouse you see all over rural Montana, but it was ours. My parents bought it cheap when I was 6. It sat on a lonely stretch of road, surrounded by wheat fields, miles from the next neighbor. It had everything a kid could want. An attic full of forgotten junk, a big backyard, and a dark, mysterious basement that my mom told me never to go near. I used to ask why. She'd just shake her head and say, because the floorboards down there are hollow. At the time, I didn't understand what that meant. But now, almost 20 years later, I wish I'd never found out. The house had a strange hum to it. You could hear it best at night, low and constant, like something breathing under the floor. My dad said it was just the pipes or the wind through the ducts, but I never believed that. The sound wasn't random. It had rhythm. Some nights, if you listen closely, it almost sounded like whispering. It started for real when I was 9. My dad was out of town for work, and Mom had tucked me into bed early. I remember lying awake, staring at the ceiling, when I heard it, thud-thud, scrape, thud-thud, scrape, something moving beneath the floor. I called out, Mom. No answer. I crept out of bed and put my ear to the vent. The whispering was clearer there. like voices speaking just below me. I couldn't make out the words, but I'll never forget the tone. Soft, coaxing. Then, from the vent, came my mother's voice. "Go back to bed, honey." Except she wasn't downstairs. She was asleep in the next room. I screamed. My mom came running. When I told her what I'd heard, her face went pale. She didn't scold me or laugh it off like usual. She just took my hand, led me to her room, and locked the door behind us. She stayed awake all night, sitting in a chair by the door, clutching a kitchen knife. In the morning, she told me not to tell my dad. "He'll think we're imagining things," she said. And so we didn't. But from that night on, she started sleeping with the radio on, always tuned to static. Years went by. The noises became part of the house, like the wind or the plumbing. My parents never mentioned it again. Then, when I was 16, my dad fell through one of the basement steps. He wasn't hurt, just startled. But when he pulled his leg free, he found a hole under the stairs. A narrow, dirt tunnel disappearing into the dark. "Damn animals," he muttered. "Probably coyotes nesting under there." He covered it with plywood and forgot about it. But I didn't. A few weeks later, I woke to a sound that didn't belong, knocking. From under my bed. 3 knocks. Then silence. Then from the vent. "Let us out." I jumped up so fast I hit my head on the ceiling. My heart was pounding, my skin cold. I grabbed a flashlight and shone it into the vent. Nothing. But the air smelled different. Wet. Metallic. Like blood. I told my parents. My dad finally lost his patience. "Enough with this nonsense," he yelled. "You're scaring your mother." That night, I heard them arguing downstairs. My mom wanted to move. My dad said no, we couldn't afford it. Then something slammed. The whole house shook. The radio in my mom's room turned on by itself, blaring static. The next morning, my dad nailed the basement door shut. He didn't say a word to me, just hammered the boards in silence. I remember him muttering under his breath, "If they want in, they'll have to go through hell to get it." Everything went quiet for a few months after that. But quiet never lasts long in that house. One night in February, a blizzard hit. The power went out. We lit candles and gathered in the living room. That's when we heard the voices again, clearer than ever, whispering through the floorboards, dozens of them. Some sounded like children, others like grown men. They were crying, begging, laughing. Then they started saying our names. Ellen, that was my mom. Robert, my dad. And then Tommy, my name. I'll never forget the way my mom's hand tightened around mine. That night, my dad went into the basement. He told us to lock the door behind him and not open it, no matter what we heard. We waited for hours. Then we heard him scream. It wasn't just pain, it was terror, the kind that makes your blood go cold. Mom ran to the door, but before she could pry the boards off, he came back up. At least, something that looked like him did. His face was pale, his eyes empty. He didn't speak, just walked past us and sat in his chair, staring at the wall. He didn't go to work after that. Didn't eat much. He just sat there, muttering under his breath. "They're still down there." A month later, he was gone. The police said he probably wandered off into the woods during a snowstorm. They never found him. Mom and I moved out soon after. We didn't talk about what happened. She told everyone he'd left us. That's what she needed to believe. But she never slept through the night again. I didn't set foot in that house for nearly a decade. Not until Mom died last year, and it became mine. I told myself I was only going back to clean it up and sell it. But deep down, I think I needed answers. The place hadn't changed much. Dust everywhere, wallpaper peeling, that same faint hum vibrating through the floor. I should have turned around the second I stepped inside. But I didn't. I found my dad's old flashlight in the drawer, still working somehow. The basement door was still nailed shut, but the boards were loose. I pried them off and stood at the top of the stairs. The air that drifted up was cold and damp, smelling like rust and rot. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. But then I heard something soft, faint, but unmistakable. My dad's voice. "Tommy." I froze. It came from below. "Tommy, I need your help." The voice sounded weak, desperate, but it was his. I'd know it anywhere. I started down the steps. Each one groaned under my weight, the beam of the flashlight trembling in my hand. When I reached the bottom, I saw the hole under the stairs, the same one he'd found years ago. Only now it was bigger, much bigger, wide enough for a person to crawl through. The whispering started again, echoing from inside the tunnel. "Tommy, come home." I should have run. But grief makes you stupid. I dropped to my knees and crawled in. The tunnel walls were damp, packed dirt, and old wood. My flashlight flickered. The deeper I went, the more the air stank, wet, decayed like something long dead. Then the tunnel opened into a chamber, and I saw them. Dozens of shapes pressed into the dirt walls. Faces sunken, distorted, like people buried alive. Their eyes moved. Their mouths opened and closed silently, whispering through the soil. One of them looked just like my father. I stumbled back, tripping over something soft. I shined my light down. It was a door, wooden, half buried in the ground, its surface carved with symbols I didn't recognize. From behind it came that low hum, the same sound I'd heard all my life. It wasn't pipes. It wasn't the wind. It was breathing. The door shuddered once. Then, in the faint light, the dirt faces turned toward me, every single one. "Don't open it," they whispered. And then, from behind the door, I heard my mother's voice. "Tommy, please, help me. I don't remember making the choice." My hands just moved. I pulled at the handle, ignoring the dirt faces screaming now, the air vibrating, the hum rising to a roar. The door burst open, and I saw darkness move. Not just shadow, something alive inside it. Something huge. It surged forward like a wave, swallowing the tunnel, the chamber, everything. I ran. I don't know how I got out, only that I ended up in the living room, gasping for air, the floor shaking beneath me. The whole house groaned, the walls splitting open, voices screaming from every vent and crack. Then silence. I don't remember leaving. I woke up in a hospital the next morning. The firefighters said the house collapsed overnight. Said I was lucky to be alive. But I didn't feel lucky, because every time I close my eyes, I still see that darkness. I still hear those whispers. And when I was packing my things to leave the hospital, I found something in the pocket of my jeans. A scrap of wood, old, wet, splintered, carved with the same symbols that were on that door. It's been 3 months. I'm staying with friends now, but things keep happening. The hum is back. I can hear it through the walls at night, low and steady, like it's following me. And last night, when I turned off the lights, I heard a voice through the vent above my bed. My father's voice. "Tommy," it whispered gentle and calm. "We never left. I've tried burning the wood piece, but it won't burn. I've buried it, drowned it, smashed it. It always comes back. Sometimes I wake up and find it sitting on the pillow next to me. Sometimes I hear scratching under the floorboards, wherever I go. And every night, before I fall asleep, I hear the same thing. Whispers rising from below, like the whole world has a heartbeat buried deep in the soil. They're getting louder, closer. And tonight, as I write this, the floor beneath my bed is vibrating again. I think it's hollow. I think they're digging up. If anyone ever finds this, don't go to that house. Don't buy it, don't visit, don't even drive past it. The land remembers. And if you ever hear whispering through your vents, even for a second, don't listen. Because once you hear them clearly, you'll start to understand what they're saying. And once you understand, you'll never stop hearing them.